Tucker Carlson, the expert of nothing, commented on the Nordstream pipeline, which delivered Russian gas to Germany and was then blown up during the war against Ukraine. In essence, he portrays the pipeline as a good conservative project, which was then destroyed by the left Biden government. Well, if people from the administration sued him for defamation, I wonder what evidence he would present. Maybe a terrible report from Seymour Hersh? We don't know. So there's a clip going around on Twitter or X. It was posted by an account called Russian Market or @RuNews. That probably means Russian news. It says, the Germans hate themselves. In a conversation with Jimmy Dore, Tucker Carlson explores the question of why Germany is participating in the Ukraine conflict and allowing itself to be deceived by the United States on energy matters. And then it says, for Mr. Carlson, the answer is clear. The Germans hate themselves. He elaborated further, illustrating the extent of self-loathing with a comparison that I can quote here on YouTube. But he is accusing the Biden administration of blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, and the Germans are not speaking up about it, because we hate ourselves, and that's that. So this is going around on Twitter or X. And this video clip, it's branded RT Germany. So that would be Russia Today Germany, which is still kind of broadcasting on the internet. It's not allowed to broadcast anymore in a regular way, in the regular sense. And let's just look at what this pipeline project really was. In essence, it was a communist pipeline project. It was the darling project of the German left. So Russia, headed by a former KGB agent who was running operations during the Cold War against Germany, Russia may self-market as more czarist than communist these days. But the pipeline project was always the dream of the German left. And of course, the KGB, now they call it something else. The KGB basically controls Russia as it is right now. So this is not some nice, fancy conservative revolution that took place over there. No, it's just the KGB. So, and there's an interesting backstory to all of this. On July 6th, 1972, the Federal Republic of Germany, that was the West, signed the first real supply contract with the Soviet Union. Previously, there had been limited business. The Soyuz pipeline for the agreed deliveries had not even been built yet. It was not until October of 1973 that Siberian natural gas reached the Federal Republic of Germany. Then came the plans for a new natural gas route from Urengoy in Siberia. Construction began in 1982. This project was initially hated by the US government, hated by the CIA and Reagan for obvious reasons. And there was an intelligence assessment at the time, which was very secret, but now you can read it. I put the link in the description below. So this assessment said the following. Increasing gas exports are Moscow's only major alternative source of hard currency. Without the profits expected from the pipeline deal, Moscow would have to sharply reduce imports of Western machinery and other goods. Now, guess what the communists did with all this Western machinery? Just building up their own military. And then it says, although no loan agreements were made, the Soviets appear to have provided perhaps $16 billion, well, the equivalent of that, in Western financing. The gas pipeline project would represent a financial bonanza for the Soviets. It also says, the prospects for Soviet revenues from exports other than oil and gas were bleak. The agreement would allow the USSR to purchase equipment for gas production and transportation of Western design. So Germany was already sort of, depending on the Soviet communist gas. It was like 14% of all the gas that we used. And then this was about to more than double, up to 29%. And so, of course, the CIA didn't like that. And the Republicans didn't like that. Ronald Reagan didn't like that. Okay, so this is what it was. And for some strange and complicated reasons, the United States governments later, they let this thing go forward. And then Germany, or the reunified Germany, became really dependent on Russian gas. We should call it KGB gas, right? Because the KGB took over Russia completely after 1991. So let's call it KGB gas. So the Social Democrats in Germany wanted the Nordstream pipelines badly. Gerhard Schröder, who eventually became chancellor and is a huge fan of Wladimir Putin, Schröder had no qualms about dealing with Matthias Warnig for the project, who had once been attached to the Soviet East German Stasi intelligence service. And there were many more people involved in this project from the German left, the Social Democrats. Now, if you check some of the important books from Soviet defectors, Jan Shena, We Will Bury You, Anatoly Golitsyn, if you check these defector books, you will read interesting stuff about the German Social Democrats. So basically, Moscow considered them to be their tool. They said, we have thoroughly infiltrated the German left, and they do what we tell them to do, basically. This is what the defectors said. Now, of course, in these defector books, they couldn't give you a lot of specific details because, it's classified. So you get an outline, and even the outline is scary enough, right? So this was a left-wing project. It's KGB gas delivered by these pipelines. So then, U.S. Senators Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and Ron Johnson wrote of potentially fatal measures that will cut Fährhafen Sassnitz off from the United States economically and financially because of the involvement in the Nord Stream pipelines. The U.S. senators are citing laws such as the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act as part of the National Defense Authorization Act and the Protecting Europe's Energy Security Act. The sanctions are independent of Donald Trump's will. So this is even outside of the hands of the president, whoever's president. This has been codified into law. You don't want this Russian KGB influence in Europe. So this is not just a left versus right issue. This is not something that you can interpret according to the baseline simplistic ideology. So you get a lot of conservatives who don't like this, didn't like this pipeline. You get a lot of Republicans, high-ranking Republicans, who hated this pipeline project, and they all vowed to stop it. They all said, we're gonna just end this project, and they were talking about the sanctions, and they were threatening these German and other companies who were involved in all of this, just cut them off from banking, cut them off from insurance, and anybody who's dealing with those companies would also be sanctioned. These were threats, according to these laws, threats also made by Republicans. Okay, just so we're clear of this. We're clear about this. This is what was going on. So you can't just quote Joe Biden, because he said that he wants to end the Nord Stream pipelines. There won't be these pipelines won't be there, or this whole thing wouldn't be exist any longer, or this wouldn't be in place anymore. This was a vague statement, and you cannot use this as evidence for these accusations that he blew up these pipelines. This is also something that was said by high-ranking Republicans for very, very good reasons. So then the pipelines get destroyed. And of course, this made the Russians look very weak because this was an important project for them. All this money they could have made from this thing. And so nobody was really directly 100% in charge of securing this thing. Just putting these pipes on the ocean floor. And you have to remember, now almost the entire ocean floor, the North Sea, the other parts of the ocean, this is full of old ammunition from World War II. Lots of explosives, some chemical weapons. This was all just dumped into the ocean. So you can't just put a pipeline anywhere. It has to be precisely cleared. You have to have a corridor where you can lay down the pipes without causing any major issues. And so this is basically a steel pipeline covered in a bit of concrete. So it's nothing special in that sense. And you just put it on the ocean floor. Now, the Russians, or these companies associated with the project, they had the option of securing the pipes through various means. And it's all a bit, it's all a bit iffy. It's all not very precise. So you can have these underwater vehicles, these underwater drones. You can have passive sonar, all kinds of funky stuff, And there was even some outrage in military circles here that this pipeline was just a cover for military devices, because it goes right through the ocean. This is not a good idea. The Russians, that was the suspicion, the Russians were going to plaster this thing with passive sonar, other devices, underwater drones, and this may have implications for a future war. And so it's basically a project that the Russians were very, very concerned about. So they didn't really take care of security. Somebody blew it up, and that made Russia look very weak. Oops. And so to bolster their image, the Russians put out this narrative that a massive conspiracy was behind the destruction of the pipelines. So it was Joe Biden and all these other important people in the United States government and these special forces and those special forces and people from Denmark and I think even people from Norway. And it was so many people who knew about it. And, this gigantic conspiracy. And of course, Russia couldn't defend against this, this gargantuan conspiracy. That's what they claimed. And this weird character, Seymour Hersh, I think he's like 85 years old now or something. He claimed he was just asking around, making some phone calls, meeting some people, and he quickly, very, 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 very quickly, found out what really happened. He uncovered the conspiracy. So we're talking about a supposed operation that was incredibly sensitive. I mean, destroying this kind of infrastructure and the danger of it, of this secret leaking out. I mean, you would imagine this would be one of the most well-protected, guided operations ever. You would just have very few people involved in this. But no, Seymour Hersh claimed he was just, talking to people, and immediately he had the whole conspiracy figured out. But there was no real evidence for Seymour Hersh's story. And also, strangely enough, the Russians didn't provide any real information and intelligence about this. I mean, they have some really good spies, those pesky Russians. But there was just nothing from them. Nothing really. You would expect them to uncover stuff and name names and, present all this info or maybe give info to Western journalists or whatever. But there was nothing. So then, of course, people claimed only super crazy professionals with the craziest equipment could have pulled this off. But then many divers actually said, no, there's many divers in Europe who could make that dive. At that shallow point, a little bit of better equipment, and you need a small team, and you have this specialized rope that goes down all the way to the target area, and then you can just put these individual packages of explosives. You could just attach them to this rope, and they will sink downwards. And then it's just a matter of having these divers remove some of the sand and dirt below the pipes, putting in these explosive packages, and just connecting the cables, detonators, and all that baseline stuff, and then pull the, push the button, essentially, or radio-controlled explosion or something, or something along those lines. So a small team could have done this. And it's not clear to this day exactly who did it. Could have been people connected to Ukraine, could have been people connected to Poland. Russia has many enemies here. And a lot of those enemies of Russia over here are conservative. They're pro-America, they're pro-NATO, and so it seems like Mr. Carlson here, Tucker Carlson, it seems like he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Did he look at the background of this Nordstream pipeline project? All these former KGB guys involved, Stasi guys involved, Germany's left involved, all these different people attached to it. Did he look into that? Apparently he did not. And so many more aspects to all this, the explosions and that stuff. He didn't really look into this. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just found these talking points, and he keeps repeating those talking points. And then he just, poses as this great conservative and expert or influencer or whatever you want to call it. You can find some videos on my channel here about the Nord Stream saga. At some point in the near future, I will make a more comprehensive report and show you these people and show you their faces and show you their connections. So you are very clear about this. This was a communist pipeline, a very, very communist pipeline project, and now it's destroyed. So, like this video, subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, share it online, and check out my ebook on ancient or old intelligence networks in Enlightenment and Communism.